Be sure to hop on over to the Spiritual Broadcast Network. It's the go-to place for all things spiritual. You'll discover internet television shows that you won't find anywhere else. You can also choose from hundreds of hours of spiritual documentaries and movies. You'll enjoy on-demand and live internet television programming 24/7. Best of all, we add new dramas, comedies, talk, and reality shows and more on a daily basis. So why spend countless hours searching the web when you can quickly find just what you want on the Spiritual Broadcast Network? Good evening. Welcome to the Spiritual Not Religious Show. I'm your host, George Lewis. Got a fun guest tonight, and we're going to talk about some pretty interesting stuff. We're going to talk tonight about mystery schools and about his mystery school in particular. That I'll talk a bit more about my guest here shortly. In the meantime, let me tell you about the Spiritual Broadcast Network. And I want to talk about our website tonight. You know, we have, I think around 400 hours of videos, spiritual videos, many really good documentary videos, spiritual documentary videos, some of the latest that are out that are well done. They're Hollywood quality videos. You can search the site, and if you want something on Islam, you can find on Islam. If you want something on Sufism, you can search on Sufism. It'll bring up all the videos that are there and all the posts that are there as far as the articles that we have. So we're working really diligently at becoming your go-to place for all things spiritual. You know, you can search the internet for hours and stay out there, you know, like and spend much time searching for what you're after and trying this and trying that. Better to come where we are to our site, and in a few minutes, be watching something that specifically is what you're looking for. So be sure and give us a try. If you're watching this after the fact in our archives, it's sbnvideo.tv. I'm sure you'll have a good time there. My guest tonight is Christopher Timms. Christopher is the founder of the Order of the Blue Star, which is a mystery school teaching. He's also done all kinds of other things that I'll let Christopher tell you about. But he spent the last 28 years traveling the world, teaches from his experience only, so we're not going to get a lot of gobbledygook that sounds like it ought to work but doesn't work. Christopher's honed his skills down to things that work, and not just for him, but will work for those people that he teaches. Christopher, are you there with us?
Yes, I am, George. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm looking forward to our conversation, our chat here. You know, before we really get into what you do, let's talk a bit about mystery schools. You know, I think there are an awful lot of people out there who are you know, on this spiritual quest that really don't know what a mystery school is. Tell us your definition of a mystery school, if you would.
Well, George, the mystery schools have their origins in Egypt, and before that in what Plato writes for us and called Atlantis. And but the actual teachings in our original form weren't called mystery schools; they were called a way of life.
Right.
And our clans, or our tribes, you could say, within the ancient world, just subscribed to a natural way of living that was in homeostasis or balance with the environment, with the universe. We applied the universal principles and laws that govern how the planets revolve around the sun and the solar systems that make up the Milky Way. These huge principles that these ancient people realized deeply. We realized how to apply them psychologically and emotionally to relationships, to the geometry of cities, the layout, the rhythms of life. And it wasn't a mystery, it was just obvious. It was just the idea of developing a working knowledge, a way of life around that. And as we fell into the age of Pisces, let's say 2,200 years ago, we began to change how we think, just neurologically, moving from one age to another. The neurological pathways begin to change in the brain, and that which was once obvious has become not so obvious, and that's why Socrates called the school in ancient Greece the Academy of the Blue Star, and that was heralded as being the first actual mystery school.
So, do you have any idea what the cause was of this neurological change? Because that's very interesting.
It is. We moved through the large precessional age, which is approximately 26,000 years. You know, a hair under that, but just for the sake of discussion, 26,000 years. It takes approximately 2,250 years for our planet to move through the wobble through each of the signs of the zodiac.
Uh-huh.
And with each sign of the zodiac, our planet and our solar system to a lesser degree, but our planet specifically, is in a different type of alignment style to suns from other solar systems and to our own sun. And that change in the solar wind, as you could call it, or light, changes. Let's see, how can I explain this quickly for you? The best way, George, is if you can imagine that our planet is like a big spherical musical instrument, like a cosmic harp, that has lines running through it and around it, and it has no form. It's just this big spherical harp suspended in the ether. And when the solar wind washes through the solar system, each planet begins to vibrate. The strings, rather, of this cosmic harp begin to vibrate, and the interference patterns that are created then become the planet, the layers of the atmosphere, the elements that planet has available to it. And as time passes, those interference patterns become stable, and then what we have called life.
So what I'm hearing you say then is that there is a vibration or a frequency change in this cycle, and that really was what had an effect on our neurological pathways.
Absolutely, it does. Yes, as we shift our alignment, we are playing a different song. The Earth is now playing a different song because there's different wind.
Right.
The solar wind. So, because we are effects of that living vibration, you could say, it changes the way we think. Therefore, it changes the way we exist in relation to our environment.
Right. Well, you know, it's interesting how much we are affected actually by vibration. And the truth is we're actually vibration ourselves, aren't we?
That's all we are.
Right.
In actuality, is just a stabilized waveform, like a overtone or a harmonic, you could say, on the Earth grid.
In the work that I do, I've found that everybody has a particular frequency that they vibrate at, and that frequency really is connected to our belief system, and the way that as we change those beliefs, our frequency tends to change. Is that how you see it?
Absolutely. There's a two-way interaction that happens. There's a outside in, which is what I call how you think, what your beliefs are, your emotional system, your memory system, how those systems collage together and form a lens through which you're going to interact with into your world. And then there's the inside out, which is the oscillation or the song that the Earth is singing to us. So we have the interference patterns between those two, outside in and inside out, all the time. And just as you said, when we rearrange how we think about things and we change our pattern, then we're changing our frequency. We change our relationship to that grid.
So when you know, if we boil this down to the simplest of terms, it really comes down to everything is connected to two things, really, as far as any change, transformation, or how we really do business, and that is frequency and vibration, and our belief system, which really what we're talking about there, it establishes our viewpoint or our attitude.
Yes, yes, our point of perception. That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, you know, back in the 50s, there was a pretty famous physicist who said that, you know, in his estimation, there were only two basic things in the universe, and those were points of view and points to view, which cuts it down to pretty slender material there, but I think he's right on with that.
That's true. That's true. That's great.
So, you know, I tried to find something on Socrates' Blue Star Academy and Academy of the Blue Star. I didn't find anything on that. Was it Socrates or Plato?
It was Socrates, and the Academy of the Blue Star, historically, through what research I've done, was the name of the school or teaching that he imparted during his lifetime in ancient Greece.
Right.
And there's of course as many different interpretations of history as there are people to interpret the history. And I find, as the years pass, George, I used to put a lot of weight on how I would trace the origins and the pathways of the mystery school. And now I tend to be more present moment as to how I experience this original teaching or this original presence and how I'm able to internalize it and then express it. But you know, we can go all the way back to Dendara in ancient Egypt with the House of the Blue Lotus. And but really, what's the point? What's the point? We could study all that stuff, but here we are right now in the most exciting moment of human history. And it's just amazing to be a part of the changes that are happening in the world, just to live in a place where we have the liberties and the freedoms to talk freely as we're doing this evening, and to ponder and to reflect upon an ancient way of being.
Well, you and I are on the same page for sure. I'll tell you, Christopher, one of the things that impressed me the most, because after, you know, like plenty of black eyes and bloody noses and stumbling and trying to find my way and, you know, like you say, trying to trace things back and check the origin and make sure they're all right. In the end, my experience is really what's valid. And if, you know, if the experience isn't there, then, you know, it may be valid later on, but it's not valid in that moment. And the moment's really, for me, about all there really is, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why the spiritual life is based upon experience. The religious life is based upon faith, belief, and understanding.
Absolutely. Well, that I want to talk a little bit about some of the things, however, that I found very interesting. The blue light. It turns out it's the first color to look for in the Bardo, which comes from the Tibetan Book of the Dead.
That's right, the Bardo.
Yeah, which is pretty interesting. I'm assuming there was no connection with that in the naming of your organization.
Well, no, that was just part of my fortunate and quite happy discovery as years passed. The multiple associations to the blue star, blue pearl, blue ray, blue light, blue man, all of these things, the blue star Kachina,
right? All
of this from different traditions that are supposedly unconnected to each other. The Blue Lotus.
Yeah, the Kachina from the Hopi Indians.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right. And
wasn't that about the, you know, like the appearance in the heavens of this blue light was supposedly it introduced us to it says the fifth world would emerge.
Heralding in a new age for man.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
I think we're living in the middle of that. What do you think?
Yes, I do too. And something fun, George, with this to show you how we've come so far, but yet we still don't know how to look or see, is that people have been interpreting these prophecies in a very fundamentalist kind of way, where they're looking for a blue star in the sky, like the comet Kohoutek,
Right.
or things like this. And I've been telling people for 24 years of during Earth Changes teachings that it's not a thing in the sky that you're going to see. The blue star is a way of life that we begin to realize from within us. It's a marker. It's a archetype that we begin to experience and harmonize ourselves with. And for me, since the time I've been a little boy, I've seen those blue, kind of Sylvania blue dots sparkle out of the corners of my inner vision, and
Right.
that just grew and developed into much bigger experiences. But the blue star is not so much a thing as it is a way of life.
Well, when you talk about this literal or fundamental way that people tend to see things, I think it's the same with this idea of a transformation, a global or Earth transformation, fifth world,
Yeah.
if you will, whatever you want to call it. I think that transformation probably is, if it hasn't already happened, it's darn close to happening.
Go ahead.
I'm convinced.
Sorry.
I'm pretty convinced that it's kind of like like we went from the Dark Ages to the Renaissance, but we can't pinpoint when that happened, and the people living in those times didn't even know that it happened.
That's right. It's a bandwidth. It's not a tick-tock of a clock and now you're in.
Right.
It's a bandwidth, and we're in that time now. The Maya say, because they were the big timekeepers, the cosmic timekeepers.
Right.
They say that it started in 1987 is when we entered that doorway. That's when Jose Arguelles began to talk outwardly about the harmonic convergence. And it was after the harmonic convergence, if you begin to look at the event cycle, the critical and peak event cycles that began to happen throughout the world, the earth change activities, whether it's earthquakes, volcanoes, storms, political upheaval, economic upheavals, all these things began to amplify in their frequency and in their amplitude, their strength. And so we're in that right now. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think we have to be Kreskin to realize that everything is changing beneath our feet.
Well, it's pretty obvious. The other thing that I see pretty clearly, I like you at a very young age was asking all the what I thought was the more important questions, like why are we here,
Right.
and
Right.
getting really poor answers. So I started looking for, what those answers were. But my thing with this, even though I was in that search, the real thing didn't happen to me until I hit this really painful kind of bottom in my life. And it really just kind of turned things around for me. And then I really started looking more at me and doing the inner work as opposed to the outer work. And I think probably prior to that, what I was looking for was, the magic wand, that thing that I could, tap the button and everything changed, and
Right.
I certainly didn't find it that way. Did you?
No, not at all. Like you, and perhaps we're more alike than what we know, because we're just getting to know each other a little bit now.
Right.
I was groomed as a young boy to take over my father's contracting business up in Delaware, where I grew up. And when it became evident that my journey was taking me in a quite different direction, my father was not happy with me.
I bet.
And because he had his world planned out through me, what it was going to be for him. And
Sure.
plus all the plans that I had been groomed to have had no momentum behind them any longer. So while I was already studying martial arts and yoga, now the journey became serious. See, before it was all outside in. I'm studying things, doing things, reading things. I was playing music professionally. I'm a drummer and a violinist, construction guy, college, all different kinds of things. But it was all outside in. But
Right.
now, all of a sudden, the foundation's pulled out from under, and I had to honestly begin to look at, what do I value? What am I about? What is most precious to me?
I would imagine that your musical background has been pretty important to you in the work that you do. You do quite a bit of work with sound, do you not?
Yes, I do, and you're absolutely right. I feel as though just the greatest gifts that my mother and father gave to me were music. And I started playing the violin when I was 6, the drums when I was 10, and I feel as though they both complemented each other very well, and that they formed a cocoon around me. And as I grew up, I kept an openness and a very right-brained way of looking at life, which was preserved through the music as I went into the world. So even though I grew up in a world full of construction and building and math and science and other exciting things, I grew up with all of this creativity, all of this natural vibration around me.
So it sounds like you got a pretty good balance, though, really, with that right brain, left brain stuff, as far as the life you were raised in.
It's easy to see how we plan and construct our lives, whether it be subconsciously or consciously at some point, but we frame an incarnation so that we can express qualities that we've been cultivating for perhaps 1,000 years.
Were you raised in a religious home, or what did that look like?
No, not at all. My father's religion was his family. He was a Normandy vet. And when he came home from the war, he went to work. My mother was a nurse, and she put him in business with her stability in nursing.
Right.
And then she retired when I was born, and I lived in kind of a Leave It to Beaver household for quite some time.
Really?
No, it was quite amazing, really. The mom being with my sisters and I, dad working, all of it.
So tell us a bit about some of your travels. I want to get into your school and what you're teaching there and why you're teaching, what your motives are, and that kind of thing. But I think that our audience, our viewers, will have a better time relating to that if they understand where you come from and how you garnered the knowledge that you have in order to most people don't just walk up one day and say, well, I think I'll start a mystery school. And I'm
right.
going to, that doesn't happen. So, and with a lot of people's misunderstanding of what a mystery school is, I think your experiences getting to that point will be helpful. So take your time and give us the story there.
That's great. Thank you for that. And I think you're right. Many people are confused as to what a mystery school actually is. And for me, as I realized that it was time for me to start my own organization, it was because I had tried to join any number of spiritual organizations. And George, honestly, if you ever want to learn how to get kicked out of an organization, I'm the guy to talk to because I'm an expert at getting kicked out of spiritual organizations.
Well, we should do a seminar together.
Yeah, we should do that.
We'll teach people that.
Goodness.
Yeah, you're telling my story.
Yeah, that's right. And it's simple. When you experience things that other people just believe in, have faith in, and think that they understand, then all of a sudden you're pulling the rug out of underneath of their religion. Because when you can just believe in something and understand it, you're keeping it at arm's length. There's a degree of separation. And always, I found when I experience something, it's quite different than what I thought it was ever going to be like.
Absolutely.
In all of my great understanding. So that's how I began to awaken to yoga, martial arts, spiritual things. And in 1988, when I started the Order of the Blue Star, I had no business plan, I had no internet or anything, no cell phone. I sold a couple Jeeps, motorcycles, things that I had, converted an old van, and started traveling And all I was going to do is talk about my spiritual experiences, my world. And I had no real understanding of how any of that was going to take form. I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. And as a background, now let's take that picture and put it on a shelf over here a little bit and then back up a little bit. Before I started the Order of the Blue Star, I was tempted to do what a number of my friends had done, which is do what I call guru chasing.
Right.
Where they would sell everything they had, go to India, get dysentery for 3 months, do all the things that they do, and have this spiritual adventure. And in no doubt, it was an amazing thing to do over and over again because they did it. And they would meet this guru, they'd be initiated by that guru, they would do different things. And while I was intrigued by that, I never was drawn to do that. And I had amazing things happen to me. You've heard the adage that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Absolutely.
Well, in 3 different times in my life, I had teachers of great magnitude. I would call them giants, spiritual giants, come into my world, and I was their only student.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes they would come from different parts of the United States and stay for a period of months or years on and off, and we would go through this love-hate relationship together, and quite volatile at times. And I noticed that my friends who were going guru chasing, as years went on, they were still in the same space that they were 10 years earlier.
Right.
Doing the same things, asking the same questions. And while I was in this very different world, which they didn't understand, and neither did I, really, to be honest with you, I was just compelled. And it all seemed to culminate just before I started the Order of the Blue Star, where I completed whatever it was that I was doing with this third spiritual giant, and then it changed. Then it was my turn to take the stage and move forward and carry whatever mantle it is that I had developed within myself out into the world and develop my skills. So I traveled the United States, Canada, took groups to Mexico as things began to grow. It was amazing. Within 2 years of starting the Order of the Blue Star in 1988, with no business plan, no internet, nothing, no marketing, really just word of mouth, within 2 years I was teaching from Vancouver to Victoria, to Montreal, to Miami, to Dallas, to Santa Cruz, Monterey, and everywhere in between. And I was traveling by ground over 50,000 miles a year.
Wow.
And then I would fly different areas. And as a few years began to develop, then I would go back and forth to Australia. And it was an amazing wave of time of growth and challenge and putting my skills up there. Because I was a young guy. I'm 54 now. I started it when I was 28.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that at some point you began to follow that inner urging and that inner guide and just kind of threw your fate to the wind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. At some point, something switched within my consciousness, and I realized that I could either do one of two things. That's a great question and a great proposition you bring up, too, for me to realize. Is I had to make a choice. Was I going to try to make my life what I thought I wanted it to be, or was I going to have the actual courage to let it become what it can be?
And it does take courage, doesn't it?
It does, because people don't understand that. Everybody's got to have their plan and their 10-year plan and their retirement plan, and where they're going, what they're doing, and I'm in this continual renewal, rediscovery, fresh.
Well, when you talk about plants and you look at what's happened here in not just in this country but in the world in the last 4 or 5 years, 6 years, there's real validation for the idea that plans aren't really necessarily the way to go.
That's right, and we're just beginning to really see that now. The last few months of this year are really going to show the fruits of just what you're talking about. The best laid plans of mice and men.
Well, I think it takes these kinds of, kicks in the head in order to get our attention enough to think out of the box, as you were saying earlier, and think in different terms than what we were taught. I grew up in Michigan, in Flint, and the deal there was you were supposed to go to work at General Motors. And my father had been, when I was 6, he had the back of his head cut off as a flywheel broke loose in Fisher Body there in Flint. So for me to go to work in a factory was like, oh my God, that was like going to prison.
Right.
I made it. I went to work at Turnstedt's, and I worked there 6 weeks, and that was it. And I had to walk away. That was the end of it. And like you, I've followed that inner voice, excuse me, which has brought me to today. Where that will take us, I don't know, but I know one thing for sure. Had I gone the other way, I think I'd have been dead by now. I'd have been dead, just, my spirit would have died.
That's true. And you have the courage and the inner strength to pry yourself out of all that momentum and to go wherever you're going to go.
So let's talk about some of the things that you do. You're in martial arts and have been for probably most of your life, right?
Oh yeah, since I was 14 years old.
And also Shabda yoga, is that?
Yeah, Shabda yoga is the yoga of inner sound. There's no outer posturing in Shabda yoga. It's the cultivation of the experience of this inner sound, this high-pitched ringing sound.
Well, I was thinking about you earlier tonight. I produce a show for another host who had, I'm trying to think of the woman's name. I would be happy to introduce you to her. She does auditory work, sound work with these kids who are, what is it when you're a savant? Usually you have this, autistic kids, and with just all kinds of things. And she also does it not only from the actual medical standpoint, but also from more of a mystical standpoint, and from that inner sound that you were talking about that we have to listen to. I'd be happy to introduce you to her. I think you two have a great deal in common. I don't know what might come of that, but I'll send you her email and introduce you via email.
That'd be very great. Thank you.
So talk with us about sound and how you use it, and the thing that interests me the most. We were talking earlier about the way that we really change is by changing what we believe, and that changes our viewpoint and causes a transformation. Are you under the experience that just using sound will bring that about, or do you use sound in conjunction with other processes, or tell us how that works?
Our personality, each of us has a unique series of overtones and harmonics, you could say, in music that we call our personality. And this unique collage of frequencies is custom, meaning that it's you have your own likes and dislikes. You may like vanilla, other people may like chocolate, and we have all types of different preferences. These preferences express themselves as pathways, accessing pathways. And so for some people, it may be, I also use full spectrum strobe lights that I entrain brainwaves in and bring people down into deep theta state, and then bring them back up into beta and through alpha. And for some people, they experience great realization and great healing from that.
Right.
Other people, it can be sound. And for other people, it can be an internal experience of this sound and this inner light. And for other people, it can be the electromagnetic universally with some of the different Tesla technologies that I've worked with. But those are different pathways of accessing the morphogenic field, that essence, that shapeless, formless essence that each of us is. And sound, in all of the indigenous people's creation stories and all the ancient religious stories, even in science, is sound, vibration, essence is the origin of what we call duality,
right.
The origin of creation itself. In the beginning, there was the word, vibration. Science calls it the Big Bang, not the big dodecahedron. It was the Big Bang, sound. And one of the approaches that I use with sound and with my spiritual life, I think everything has to be congruent, everything has to follow the same methodology, is that the sound technologies are not diagnostic. You are not a sack of symptoms to be diagnosed, given prognosis or prescription. Everybody's exactly the same. We just appear to be different. It's as though we're all reflections of one flame.
So what you're saying is at our core, we're all the same.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All segregation is part of Maya, part of the illusion of duality and separateness.
Well, when you say illusion of duality, and I hear this term a lot, but yet sound is duality.
Yes, sound is that which divided the waters.
Right.
When we talk about it, when a serpent moves across the still water, which represents oneness, sacred unity, when a serpent moves, it moves in a sine wave pattern.
Right.
And that sine wave pattern divides below and above. There's duality. And if you freeze frame and draw a circle around one sine wave, that's a yin-yang symbol.
Right.
That's what the yin-yang symbol represents, is duality, of course, but it represents vibration dividing sacred unity, oneness.
So let's talk a little bit. We're going to run out of time here, and I want to talk about your school, and I want to talk about how people can come to you and gain from your experiences. You do online readings. What is that? What does that amount to? I see that on the front page of your website. What does that? What do you do there?
A couple of different things. It depends upon where someone is drawn to access me. Some people are drawn by the idea of Akashic record reading, and I did that initially when I started off with 28 years ago, and then I stopped because I realized that everyone was just into the amusement of it, and they weren't really applying what I was sharing with them.
The pixie dust.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the loaves and fishes, But what the Akashic record is, when I look at someone, whether they're in my physical presence or I'm communicating with them over the phone, I close my eyes and I see out of the third chakra or energy center the Quran Sarut, or the seed body, and it opens up like a lotus flower, and the petals all have little portals in them, like little screens. And then I see some of the dominant lives, not all of them, of course, but dominant lives, past and future, that are running simultaneously. And they're all refracting on this present moment. And then I'll narrate some of the qualities, characteristics, some of the storyline that I see from several of these that seem to be relevant to what this person may be experiencing in their world now. And that's important because it helps them unwind the pattern that they're in and set themselves free and move forward. So it's really a way of helping that person talk to themselves from past and future incarnation. The second way is a direct reading. where a person would not be drawn to the idea of past and future lives, is just me merging with them and talking with them about themselves as though I'm in their mind, as though I'm in their being. And that's proven to be quite valuable and quite exciting.
So you're clairaudient and clairsentient and clairvoyant. Do you channel it all, or is this strictly you?
No, it's strictly me. Anybody, any other being wants a access point to the physical world, let him take a number at the reincarnation deli and wait for his turn.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's like, okay. Sometimes I think that like I've done some automatic writing, and which is, I think we have a connection with a higher self. But part of what I wanted to do, I recognized afterwards with the automatic writing, was I really wanted that authority of that other being, other than it coming from myself, rather than accepting the power myself and going with it.
That's very insightful, and I find that it's very important to help people lose interest in accepting any intermediaries between their own divine nature, that infinite pool of wisdom that rests within each one of us, and our personality. What I want to do is work to get out of the way of that, let that creativity, let that inspiration, let that presence just shape my personality so that I can experience it on an ongoing basis, not just when I happen to stumble into those states.
Well, yeah, this whole idea of other, people and beings who have passed over, I'm not convinced that that the moment that we leave here, we suddenly find perfection. So I'd be a little hesitant of what kind of advice I was getting anyhow. Right.
Well, there's another very good point that most people don't question any of that because they're interested in just the phenomena.
Right.
And it's not a condemnation of anyone pursuing any of that.
No, not at all.
But it's just different levels of consciousness depending upon what you're willing to bring into your recipe for your day.
And those,
go ahead, George.
And those can also be bridges for us. I think, I think as I've listened to your story, mine has been a process of evolution that I think is still in process. I believed 30 years ago, I believed this, and 25 it changed, and it's just kind of evolved. I really work at staying as open as I can to that change, because whatever I've got right now, I know it's not the absolute. There's more. Absolutely.
I mean, the only absolute there is in creation is that there are no absolutes. Absolutely.
Exactly. So your website is. Tell us your website and how people can contact you.
My website is ChristopherTimms.com, www.ChristopherTimms.com. And please go there and look around. There's hours of wonderful, good things to read and to listen to.
And you produced quite a, you produced CDs and that kind of thing. So you have stuff that they can actually buy online and check out. Do you have classes or courses that you do online, or is it strictly there? You're in, what are you, over in the West Palm area?
North of West Palm, George. We're in Melbourne.
Oh yeah, okay. So you're up a ways. All right, I got you.
And I find that I kind of got a lot of the traveling out of my system.
I bet.
And what I prefer now, gosh, the technology is so wonderful, just like this evening, to reach the people that we're reaching.
Right.
I use the WebEx conferencing system from Cisco, and I teach within the Florida area primarily, but I'm simulcasting to Canada, California, Asheville, all over the place, wherever there's groups that want to be a part of the teaching, anywhere in the world.
Hey, I'm looking into WebEx right now myself. How is the video coming to you from those that are connected? Is it going both ways, or is it just streaming out?
you can adjust it however you'd like. You can either shut off their video and audio and just have it as a one-way teleconference, or you can have it two-way. I open up everything video and audio during Q&A portions of the teaching, and then I close it back up to keep the fidelity of audio and video at its maximum throughout the day.
How does it compare with Skype, other than you can have multiple people involved?
It's better.
Better quality.
Better, and with WebEx, I can have up to 20 hubs connecting.
Right.
And it's great. It's great. And I think it's part of the metaphor, and I wanted to mention that for a moment too, is the conferencing system is just like what we're using this evening. It's all a metaphor for our own innate abilities to be a part of each other's lives and connect visually and kinesthetically, all these different levels, because we can feel each other much more when we can see as well as hear.
Well, I didn't have a very good understanding of the Akashic record until I started to understand that first hard drive when it came out, that first memory chip.
Yes.
And that started to shake me, where I could say, oh, that could really be a possibility.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
So, what have we missed that you'd really like to impart to our viewers?
What I'm focusing in these years of my life is bringing out the 14-month study program, which is called the Mystery School Teaching.
Uh-huh.
And without going into an infomercial, just to give people an idea of what it's about, the original seed knowledge that each of us has within us, I can call it a divine blueprint. It has been covered up, if you will, by concepts, structures, beliefs, and faiths that are self-limiting, that are isolating, segregating in nature. And by doing a little bit of deprogramming, just like being deprogrammed out of a cult, because we've been in the Piscean Age cult for over 2,000 years, and as we deprogram ourselves, we simply reveal that which is already pristine and wonderful within each one of us. And that's all the Mystery School teachings are. And they're revealed over the 14 months through sacred geometry, through relationships beyond compromise, through the power of sound, through the essential questions of life, the meaning of life, the paradigm conspiracy, a number of different, each month is a different doorway, as it's called, which takes you through different aspects of the seed knowledge.
So you got a syllabus for this, and it's you take people through in a very programmed kind of way?
Absolutely. Each month, whether you're taking it remotely through WebEx or we're with each other physically, there's PowerPoint, there's video, there's group and individual exercises. There's a little bit of homework, not so much reading as maybe watching a couple good movies like The Matrix,
right,
things like that, and studying all the metaphor within that. And then there's break-off exercises where you have a partner each month that you work with by phone or in person.
Sounds like a pretty worthwhile course to take, especially if you're doing it over time like that. It gives you an opportunity to really get some value and some depth, because some of this stuff is pretty, it can take a bit to really make a transition from an old belief into understanding some of what what I hear you offering. So listen, I'll tell you what, if you get into, on the West Coast over here of Florida, into Sarasota, look me up. We'll have some coffee and have a good chat, and I'd like that very much.
I would enjoy that as well. It'd be great to spend some time with you, George.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to send you links to the show and that kind of thing, and some code if you want to put the interview up on your website. You've been an outstanding guest. I had a hunch that you and I were going to really we were going to connect pretty on very similar levels. So I've had a good time with you.
And I with you. I feel the same way. I've been looking forward to this since we said it.
Sounds good. And now we'll get together at some point again. And in the meantime, you have a good week.
And you you as well. It's going to be busy for us both, I find.
Well, that's not a bad thing, I think.
No, it's the time. It's what we're here for, is to be busy right now.
Absolutely. You have a good night now.
Thank you, sir. Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Well, we've had a great conversation with Christopher Timms. Definitely check out his website. You'll find it very interesting. The thing that in my conversation with Christopher is that I'm convinced that he's the real deal, and not everybody out there is. So take a few minutes, pop on over to ChristopherTimms.com. I got a great guest next week. So be sure and come back, same time, same spot. And in the meantime, don't forget to accentuate the positive and have a fantastic week. Be sure to hop on over to the Spiritual Broadcast Network. It's the go-to place for all things spiritual. You'll discover internet television shows that you won't find anywhere else. You can also choose from hundreds of hours of spiritual documentaries and movies. You'll enjoy on-demand and live internet television programming 24/7. Best of all, we add new dramas, comedies, talk, and reality shows and more on a daily basis. So why spend countless hours searching the web when you can quickly find just what you want on the Spiritual Broadcast Network?